Good evening. First, we go to New York, where the world's parliaments, from speakers to backbenchers, have been urged to embrace their critical function in ensuring that the future Sustainable Development Goals become a reality for the planet. Over 150 countries are represented at the Inter Parliamentary Union's Fourth World Conference of Speakers at the United Nations in New York, where the role of legislators in crafting national frameworks for the SDGs is being brought into sharp focus. The SDGs will be formally adopted next month when heads of state gather at the UN summit to rubber stamp the 17 new goals. National Assembly Speaker Baleka Mbete and NCOP Chair Thandi Modise are leading a multi-party delegation from South Africa to this year's conference. Our UN correspondent Sherwin Bryce-Pease joins us now live from our bureau at the United Nations in New York. Sherwin, good evening and thank you so much for joining us. Now, Sherwin, there appears to be a greater urgency around the role parliaments should play when it comes to the SDGs. Why are we seeing this marked change in posture by the IPU?
Well, it's a very important point. I think, if I could just articulate what an official at the IPU told me recently, was that the MDGs were decided by experts at the United Nations in a room and then got sort of, sent around the world, and parliaments didn't really quite know what to do, what to make of this document in some instances. With the SDGs, there's been much broader consultation. You see NGOs, parliamentarians, up to the executive around the world, people, businesses, for example. There have been business summits looking at how to form these 17 goals. And I think what you're seeing is a much broader consensus around the world about what these goals are, what will be adopted in September, and how there will be national ownership in terms of implementing the SDGs. And I think that's what you're hearing from the Inter Parliamentary Union. Parliaments are going to play a very important role when it comes to oversight and in terms of making sure that there are checks and balances when it comes to implementation.
Now, are we seeing, are you getting a sense of a difference with regards to the approach to the SDGs?
Absolutely a different approach. I think just in terms of the language, Lulu, I think if you look at the 17 goals, they are more definitive, they are more finite aims. We talk about completely eradicating poverty everywhere by 2030. We talk about achieving gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls by 2030 in those 15 years. Ending hunger, ensuring quality education for all. The language is more definitive. If you look at the MDGs, it was about reducing, it was about combating, it was about coming to terms with what were these huge developmental problems facing the world. What you're seeing here is an end result in the SDGs. They want to reach these goals by the 15-year deadline, and I think that's why there's a greater need for coherence between institutions, whether it's from Parliament, whether it's the executive, and or whether it's business. And beyond that, they're appealing, and the focus on parliamentarians here, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, is that parliamentarians represent constituents. So it takes these SDGs much closer to the people, and that's where the difference is going to be made. It's going to be on the ground.
Now, speaking to the issue of parliamentarians, Sherwin, South Africa has a multi-party delegation, and we understand that the EFF, the DA, and the ANC are represented. What's the mood there?
Pretty good, actually. I mean, this is not really defined by which parties are here. This is a South African delegation representing the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces. These are South African representatives in this instance, sitting together in the South African area in the General Assembly. So the mood very good. It'd be interesting to hear by come Thursday at the end of this conference what some of these parliamentarians have learned and whether they will be able to contribute to ensuring that the SDG document that will be adopted here in September later next month becomes a living national document in terms of the people they will influence and help in South Africa and certainly their constituencies.
Sherwin, thank you so much for joining us. That was our UN correspondent, Sherwin Bryce-Pease, live to us from our bureau at the United Nations in New York.